Hi guys, my name is Shane Cuthbert and I'd like to welcome you back again. In this video, we're going to answer 3 specific questions. The first question we're going to answer is, what specifically is the unconscious mind? The second question we're going to be answering is, how has it been affecting you? But most importantly, we're going to answer the question, how do we learn to reprogram and control our unconscious mind so that we can get to a point where our unconscious mind no longer controls us? Imagine you have these magnets inside of you that have the ability to almost, propel you and drive you towards certain behaviors and certain habits, okay? Likewise, we have these magnets that almost, repel us from, certain behaviors and habits also, okay? So we have these magnets that have the ability to do both. They can take us in one direction and they can almost, push us away from another direction, okay? They can do both at the same time. So we have these inner magnets within our bodies. Imagine you are doing something that you know is really good for you, or perhaps you're trying to do something that you know is really good for you, okay? But you've got these magnets inside of you that just keep pushing you away from it, okay? This is something that's obviously going to make you better. It's going to help you, overcome obstacles. It's going to help you grow. Yet, these magnets inside of you, your unconscious mind, is not letting you do it, okay? It's pushing you away. It keeps repelling you from that. The problem is it becomes, this exhausting struggle for you when you're trying to change. It's really hard. It's exhausting. It's hard work. It's harder than it needs to be because there's something invisible that's holding you back, okay? It's not as simple as perhaps it should be. It's not as easy as it should be. There's something that you can't see, you can't quite put your finger on it, and it's just holding you back. Okay, likewise, and I'm sure a lot of you are going to be able to relate to this one, there's something that you know is bad, okay? You know something's bad. Let's look at a relationship, for example. You know the relationship is bad for you. You're not getting what you're not getting your needs met. This person is a bit of a dick. This person can be nasty or mean, and you just feel yourself stuck in this relationship that you know is bad, okay? Your friends are telling you it's bad, your family's telling you it's bad. You know that, this is not for me, this is not what I want, yet you still feel this compulsion and this magnetic sort of, desire to just be propelled towards that thing, okay? So can you relate with that? Has there ever been sort of something in your life that has been quite unhealthy for you, harmful to you, something you know consciously that is bad, okay? You can tell people, you can say, look, this is bad, I know what I'm doing is bad, but, I can't help it, or that's what's going on here, okay? We've got these magnets. If you can picture them as magnets, it's the unconscious mind that is doing that, okay? It's doing that, it's invisible, we can't see it, but it's doing that. It's drawing us towards things that are unhealthy, and it's pushing us away from the things that are healthy. Now, if your unconscious mind, those magnets inside you are pulling you towards, a happier, healthier lifestyle, then that's fantastic, okay? If you find that you don't struggle with diets, you pick them up pretty easily, you're able to change your health and go to the gym, you're motivated to do all these great things, that is fantastic. If your unconscious programming is pulling you towards, really productive, work ethics, if it's driving you towards, succeeding in business or in your career, in your job, that's great. If your unconscious mind is drawing you and attracting you to, amazing, beautiful people, really good, wholesome relationships, then I'm, unbelievably happy for you, because that is also great. if your unconscious mind is pulling you towards people that are going to, boost your self-esteem, they're going to reward you, they're meeting all your needs, it's a quite healthy relationship, there's a little bit of give and take, there's a bit of compromise, and you're drawn to these happy, healthy relationships, then congratulations. That's something that you should be very, very pleased with. However, if that's not the case for you, that's also okay, that's fine. But don't fall into the common trap that people fall into. This is another trap where most people find themselves forcing themselves into the direction of something they know that is good for them against their unconscious minds, sort of against the magnets. Look, if you're just relying on, willpower and you're expecting to stay motivated when you're running uphill constantly, you're hitting that brick wall constantly, you're going up against those inner magnets. Okay, it's not healthy, and you're not going to be able to sustain it long term. Okay, because, even if you're Superman, that sort of thing is really difficult. Okay, like I see a lot of people that are struggling with that. They're going against their own self. And that's the hardest sort of hurdle of all. It's just like paddling upstream against the current. Now you can do it for a while. We can all do it for a little while, but you just can't do it long term. That's why people do really well, at the gym, or they start eating really healthy, they're losing weight, they're looking great, all their friends and family are congratulating them. You're doing so well, this is really good. You see them in 12 months' time and they've just fallen back into the same habits. They're putting that weight back on again. People are thinking, wow, what's going on here? They were doing really well. It's because we can do well short term. Okay, when we've got those blockages, when we're motivated and when we're inspired, we can overcome those hurdles. Okay, we can have a really great start to the race, but life is a long time. And that's a long time to keep battling, your unconscious mind, those inner magnets, and those things that are drawing you towards or pushing you away from, negative things. So the trick is to not force yourself to go against those, those internal magnets, okay? And go against your unconscious mind, okay? It's just too strong. What we need to do is learn how to reprogram our unconscious mind, okay? We need to learn how to change out those magnets, okay? Reprogram them so that they're working with us, not against us. If we learn how to do that and we master that skill, it's just going to be like sitting back. We're not going to have to row. We're not going to have to paddle. We're just going to be going with the flow. Okay, we're going to be driven towards those things that are good for us just naturally. We don't need to read books. We don't, need to take antidepressants. We don't need, help or support from peers. We're just going to naturally feel driven towards that, happy, healthy lifestyle. If this sounds like something that you want to learn how to do, then this lesson is going to be perfect for you. So let's first look at a model of the brain, a model of how the brain works. Now, scientists say that the human brain evolved from the inside out. Now, if we look deep down in our mind, you're going to find, at the core of our brain, you're going to find what's referred to as the reptilian complex, okay? Now, this is where, your amygdala is housed. It's responsible for survival and reproduction, all of our basic human needs, because it was, developed a long time ago. It was the first part of the human brain that we had. Okay, so I'm going back hundreds of thousands of years ago, when we were sort of, apes and monkeys walking around. We had this basic core part of the brain, which was responsible for instincts like, again, I said reproduction, finding food and finding shelter. Okay, so that's at the core of the human brain. The reason they actually call it the reptilian brain is because it's responsible for all of our primitive instincts. So just those basic, drives for food, shelter, and reproduction. It's also where our flight or fight responses come from. You're going to find this part of the brain in a lot of reptiles, okay? A lot of older species, crocodiles, and things like that. Now, the layer above the reptilian brain is often referred to as the mammalian part of the brain. This part of the brain is responsible for a lot of our emotions, okay? It's often referred to as the limbic system. It's called the mammalian brain, hold on, because it's found in mammals, okay? So, like the reptilian brain is very primitive and it's found in a lot of reptiles, the mammalian brain is obviously found in a lot of more evolved mammals. Now, if you take, let's say for example, you've got a lizard, you've got a pet lizard, and you've got a pet dog. Now, they're both going to display similar instincts when it comes to, things like territorial dominance, but you're going to be sort of more able to emotionally connect with a dog than you are with a lizard, okay? Lizards don't really have emotions. A dog is man's best friend. So if you look at that example, you can see how, obviously the mammals and the mammalian sort of part of the brain just has a little bit more going for it. There's other things in the mammalian part of the brain that are responsible for our herd instinct, being part of, having social belonging, being part of, a team or a family. As mammals, we've relied on that sort of herd instinct to keep us going, throughout history. In more advanced mammals like dolphins, other primates, and especially humans, we have a section on the outside known as the neocortex. The neocortex is responsible for, very advanced, communication skills like reading, writing, and talking, okay? It's how we communicate with others. It's how we problem solve, okay? So when you look at sort of chimpanzees and they're able to solve puzzles, to get food and that sort of thing, there's a lot more going on up there. There's a lot more thought going into what's going on. This part of the brain is really what separates us from, other mammals and other animals, okay? The neocortex is something that we have, obviously, as humans. We have the ability to communicate what we have learned onto other people, okay? So we have the ability to communicate and share our knowledge amongst ourselves, amongst our tribe or our group or our herd. We also have the ability to use logic for problem solving, as I said before, and also reasoning, which basically gives us the intelligence that other animals just don't have. The interesting thing about the brain, really, and we've talked about this in other videos, is that the brain is much like a muscle, and you'll find that the parts that get the most practice, okay, they get the most exercise, they're going to be the strongest parts of our brain. The really cool thing here is that the outer part of the brain that is responsible for most of our logical thinking gives us an awareness of what's happening inside the brain, okay? So, in our the systems where we've got our emotions and we've got our instincts coming from, it lets us have an awareness of what's going on, deep down inside of us without having to react to it. In other words, we can be aware of and observe our own instincts and emotions without having to act on them. We can actually respond back to them and retrain those inner parts of the brain. Okay, so think about it, for example, if we didn't have logical thinking, okay, we would just be basically, animals, instinctual animals going around protecting our environments. There'd be a lot more fighting, there would be probably a lot more war, okay? We still have it now, so probably not the best analogy to use, but, things would be a little bit more chaotic. So what I'm saying is, when you're hungry, without that sort of outside part of the brain, the more evolved part of the brain, you'd probably just walk into a shop, grab a loaf of bread, not pay for it, and not care about the consequences, right? Because you're just driven towards what you need now. Your emotions, you know it's going to feel good doing it, and your instincts. So your basic human instinct, your basic drive, your animalistic, primitive drive is forcing you to eat, okay? We've all got to eat. So you're going to probably end up in jail because you're stealing bread all the time. Now, because we do have that outside, more evolved part of the brain that has reason and logic, we're able to think ahead. We're able to think, okay, I feel hungry. Okay, I can feel that instinctually. I really need to eat. I'm getting quite emotional about it because I'm really sort of hungry. I'm getting these feelings. I'm feeling scared that I'm not going to eat. I'm, really struggling with those feelings. But we're not going to go and rob a shop for a loaf of bread because we have the forethought to think ahead and know that we don't want to get in trouble. We don't want to get arrested or end up in jail. So we're using that reasoning, it's going on in our mind unconsciously, okay? We're not always aware of it, but every decision that we make day in and day out, there's a bit of a discussion and a bit of a communication going on between your three levels of the brain, okay? And in the end, our more intelligent, most of the time, our more intelligent part of the brain is really going to make the decision that's best for all of us, all of those levels of the brain. Like our muscles, we can choose, we can make a conscious decision, an educated, logical decision to exercise specific parts of the muscles that we want to get stronger. Just because we, as humans, physiologically have, what it takes to, make these things happen, we do have the ability to, choose what we want to train. We do have the ability to choose which emotions we let in. We have the ability to choose which instincts and drives we're going to let, drive us towards something today. Okay, just because we have that ability doesn't mean it makes it any easier to do, okay? And that's why people still rob, shops for loaves of bread. That's why people still get in trouble. People still get in jail because they're exercising those basic levels of the brain, okay? Yeah, there's a difference between, obviously, when you look at different sort of socioeconomic areas of what parts of the brain they're using more frequently. So really what we want to understand is how to retrain those parts of the brain and how to use those parts of the brain more often so that they do become stronger, okay? And we are using our logic and we are using that. So just because we have the ability to do it doesn't make it any easier to do. This is something that we have to consciously decide to learn how to do. Just because we have the ability to learn new languages, okay? We've got that ability to do that. People do that. Some people do that. Doesn't mean we do it, okay? Doesn't mean we do it. I personally don't know any other languages apart from English. I have the ability to learn, but I don't. The problem is when we've got these childlike emotions, these animalistic drives and instincts, coupled with social rules and expectations, and our logical, rational thinking all going on within our mind at the exact same time. Okay, so picture it as four cogs spinning around constantly. Okay, it's chaos. That's always going on inside us. The real struggle is that some of those different parts want different things at the same time. Okay, so we can't satisfy all of those, wants, needs, and desires at the same time. We can't always satisfy our emotional needs, our primitive animalistic needs, while also, our social belonging, just like the example of when, the guy's hungry, he goes to the shop, he steals a loaf of bread. That's not socially acceptable, so he's not satisfying that need. He's not satisfying, his logical needs of, hey, you're going to go to jail if you do that, you can't do that. He's really just satisfying his basic human instinct, animalistic reptilian instinct, saying, I am hungry, therefore I am going to take food. So it's really difficult for us to start lining all of these processes up so that they work together cohesively, okay? We can't satisfy all of those parts of the brain at once. Another thing that happens is that at different times, one of those parts will just completely take over, and just completely take the driver's seat and really drive us in a direction that, the other places won't want to take us to, which again, in the example, stealing the loaf of bread, that's an example of our animalistic part of the brain completely taking over, having a disregard for the other parts of the brain, and just, really taking over and taking control. All this is doing is it's creating that internal tug of war or that inner conflict. Okay, and that's what we're feeling when there's a part of us that wants to do something, we know that it's good for us, yet unconsciously we've got those magnets drawing us to something else or pushing us away from the thing that we want to do. Okay, it's because we have all these different levels inside our mind, inside the human brain. When we get all of those parts of our brain lining up and working together, that's when we become pretty much unstoppable. So you'll find, more successful people, whether it's in business or in life or relationships, they have learnt to basically get all of those parts of their brain to line up a little bit more and work better with each other. If it often feels like there are different parts of you that want different things at different times, now you have a deeper understanding of why that is. When the different parts of our instincts, emotions, and thoughts conflict, we feel magnetically drawn in the wrong directions. This keeps us stuck in a vicious cycle of self-sabotage, where no matter how much we try to force the change, we just end up getting exhausted. In the following lessons, I'll show you a simple model of how your unconscious mind works that will make it easier for you to understand. I'm then going to show you some simple exercises to retrain and strengthen the different parts of your mind so that they can work together. So that the more primitive parts will follow your lead rather than you being driven by them. When you learn how to do this, your mind will stop resisting the change that you want, develop an unstoppable motivation that will magnetically drive you towards the goals without even having to try.